30 seconds. And welcome to another Biddle on March 30th, 2019. How's everybody doing?
Doing great.
Good.
Very good, thank you.
So, if anybody has been in the Telegram group, they know that we have been trying out Solus this week. And some good, some bad. Some people liked it, some people didn't. Who would like to go first, Peter? Why don't you go first?
For a start, I've been using Solus for over 2 years, but most of my hardware is old. I have never used EFI ever, and so I use Grub all the time. But I'm looking forward to my new System 76 Philo coming, and that will have EFI, but it will use the whole drive. So I have no issue. And that's my Solus report.
Really? Come on, that's all you got.
It's brilliant. It's the best distro out there. It's the number one best distro for new users.
Okay, all right. Moving on.
You asked for it.
Yes, I did. Well, I wanted to hear, some good news because some of the bad news is coming.
Okay, good. I use it daily for my workflow. Yeah, Solus Budgie. I did try Mate for this Distro challenge. I liked it. It was reminiscent of Gnome 2, of course, and it worked fine, but it's not Budgie. And it was just worked great. So, Solus is part of my life.
All right. Vash, how did you do with Solus this week?
Well, so I didn't get a whole lot of time with it. I had such a busy week. But so what I noticed in the install last week is you tell it the drive you want to use, but then when I tried to figure out the partition for the grub, it would only let me select my main hard drive. I couldn't actually pick the one that I had picked. I mean, I got it to work, but it was pretty annoying. Otherwise, I had to go in and manually format everything or manually partition the entire drive, which I was fine doing. But, excuse me, when you go and actually try to manually partition the drive, it brings up every drive at the same time. And you can't select between them as far as I can tell. So you can't just tell it, I only want to view this drive or I only want to view this drive. So you're looking at all your drives. And luckily, this thing only has 2. But if I had more than that, I mean, that would have been a nightmare to try to figure out which drive I'm looking at when you're trying to manually partition. So I guess you have to partition in like gparted beforehand or something. But yeah, that was a bit of an annoyance that you couldn't either pick the drive for the grub or you couldn't more easily manually format the drive. But other than that, the install went just fine. I didn't really have any issues. I was writing it to the full drive, so I didn't. I think some other people were talking about that. If you didn't, so Budgie, I kind of like. I haven't messed with it too much, like I say, but I mean, I like the little Raven widget window or thing on the right. I like that thing. It seems to boot up really fast. The updates have been coming through. I haven't had even today when I went in and updated after not really using it for a good part of the week. Everything came down fine and ran just fine. But so far, that is my bare bones thoughts on it.
Well, you mentioned about the partitions, and I didn't have a problem with the partitions, although I was given a suggestion by one of the people that run Solus regularly to partition the drives in Ubuntu before I went to install Solus. So that tells you right there that there's some issues going on. So
I think the official line is to use a live disk to run gparted before you install.
You can run gparted from the Solus install disk.
Yes.
Yep.
And if I really wanted to mess with it, I could have eventually done that. But I mean, at the same time, I'm just trying to approach it as somebody just trying to install it.
Yeah, good.
And like I say, it was really weird to me that I could pick the drive and let it, you know, send it to that drive, but yet I couldn't pick the drive for the grub boot. That was just really odd to me, because it has a drop down menu, but when you click on the drop down menu, nothing else is there. For me, anyway. Maybe there was something specific about my setup, but
no, I don't think so.
Setup.
Solus, from my experience, if you've got many EFI boot partitions, it will go for the very first one in the list. That's what it's done to me every time.
Gotcha. That's what it looks like it was doing. It was specifically picking that one, and I could not get it to switch. So, you know, not a huge deal, but it's just kind of an annoyance on that end, like I say. But I mean, once I've actually gotten in, the other thing I will say that I noticed today is just ultimately I do wonder what it's going to be like once they update the package manager to better be able to, you know, go out to other things. I don't know exactly what they're doing, but I did, you know, it's just kind of hit or miss on if they have something that you want. It seems like so far, I had to install Zoom via the tar file, or you'd have to go Flatpak, one of the two.
Yep. Well, I mean, that's one of the things that I've always been mentioned about Solus, but I guess the snaps and Flatpaks are the interim, well, maybe not even the interim, but the answer to that, to allow you to install more software, because, you know, obviously not everything is in the Solus repositories. All right, let's move on. Frank?
Sorry, I was muted.
All good, brother.
All right, so I sent you an email, but I'm actually here, so I can actually talk about some stuff.
Yep.
A long time ago, I tried Solus, and I don't really like Budgie. So I decided to give the Mate version a go. And right out of the box, I will say that it is the prettiest implementation of Mate I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I fell in love with the background. I think it's called the Devil's Bridge. It is absolutely just gorgeous. It's their default background. The window manager borders, I think it's like Plate Noir, is what the theme that they were running, and I just was like stunned on how pretty it was out of the box. It worked fine. My biggest issues, I came up with a bug that it has an NTP bug, which apparently happens with Mate, where it shows you have NTP active, but it's not working. And apparently it is a bug that they are aware of that's been around for a long time. It affected me, you know, that's what's going to happen. The biggest couple questions I have are with it being a rolling release and the package availability. So like Firefox, for instance, I actually was really surprised that it's still behind what Ubuntu is running. So Ubuntu is at 66.02 and Solus is at 66.01. And as a rolling release, I would kind of assume you're going to be right at the edge. Software availability, I know it's a small group compared to what you've got with Debian and the whole Arch stuff, but there's a lot of packages that aren't available. A lot of packages I use every day. And that's really the stuff I saw. I wanted to say that Justin was awesome, giving support, offering support for everybody. Yep. And before we got on, we were talking about kind of a joke about the top 7 distros thing. And one of the things I think Vash was talking about, or you were mentioning just a minute ago, about going in and partitioning your system before you do the installer, that is not something a beginner needs to be doing. If this is going to have any kind of beginners using it, that stuff needs to be kind of one of the first things they really, really need to work on. That installer needs to be, boom, out of the box, running, so that you don't have to do any kind of crazy thing as a new user. But it's pretty. It's just the software availability is my biggest problem with it.
Well, a couple things. One, we will get into the whole partitioning thing and the ESP thing for Grub, and we're going to get into We're going to hopefully have time to talk about a article about the 7 best Linux distributors, which, yeah, we're going to have to talk about. But the software availability, I will say that even though that's a stigma that goes with Solus, the guys, including Justin, who was awesome enough to say at the beginning of the week, hey, if anybody needs any help with Solus this week, I will be available. Just tell them to PM me, which I think is awesome. And that's one of the great things about Solus is the community. And every time I see that in Telegram, every time I hear somebody or see somebody say the software is the problem as far as not running Solus, they'll be the first ones, Justin especially will be the first one to say, well, which software are you talking about specifically? Maybe it can be packaged, or maybe, we could work on it or whatever. So even though it's probably not the best at the very start to see some of the software you want not there, they are pretty quick in responding to that.
Hey, Rocco, before we go on, you just mentioned the community. And like one of the elephants in the room is, again, stuff that happened earlier or later last year with Solus. And it is awesome that that community came together and continued that distro, because they could easily fallen apart. And that is just absolutely awesome that they bound together and carried on and are really, to have the 4.0 release. It is absolutely awesome that they came together and did that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Agreed. All right, Barbara, you are up. You are also muted, Barbara. There you go. Try it now.
Okay, good. Thank you. I was getting there. Anyway, I did actually install it. I installed. Woohoo!
You installed it?
Yes, I installed it, but I installed it on. I have a ThinkPad T420, and I installed it on that. I already had Ubuntu on there. Ubuntu 1810, Ubuntu Mate 1810. No problem. And that's not even on, the first drive. It's actually the second drive. It's a little. Like a little half-size M-SATA drive. It's like 256 gig. It installed on there perfectly. I didn't have the install problem, which I expected. That part of it was really great. And I know the thing with the software, so I didn't even, think about, oh, gee, it doesn't have this, and I need those. But Mate was really very good. That implementation of it is really nice. The only thing is that, and this would be a problem, I think, with beginners, and that goes into that article that hopefully we'll discuss later, that it only has only like, I think, 2 or 3 themes installed. You have to go and get the rest of the themes that in Ubuntu Mate are always there. They have like, a dozen themes or something. And you had to go and get those additional themes if you wanted to use one that you like better. Other than that, I really didn't have any problems with it. And I was really pleased.
How does it compare to Ubuntu Mate? Or as like, if you had them side by side, are there any major differences?
No, just the icon set. It's flatter than maybe the one that I usually use. And that's where you have to go and get the themes. But I could get it to be configured exactly as I have it with Ubuntu Mate, which was really nice.
Yeah, the biggest difference is there's just the welcome is really it's not in the initial.
You don't have that.
The initial Mate is very green.
Yeah.
That's
so I change it.
Well, that could be good or bad depending on your opinion. So
I mean, that's really, yeah. I mean, if you don't like green, well, there are other choices there. But I think that the way that they did, the way that just the icons and stuff, they did a really nice job with those, choosing that set. And I didn't have any problems with it. It worked. And I had been reading all week about all these problems people had. And then I finally was able to get around to putting it on this morning. And it worked fine. I didn't have any installation problems. It actually went on SDB instead of the default A. And it installed beautifully next to Ubuntu Mate 1810.
Nice.
Which surprised me.
Very nice. Yeah, there was a few problems, including myself, with installing it. So But we'll get into
I
that.
think it's the T420, the ThinkPad, and I don't think it has UEFI.
No.
No, I was
No,
going to
it
say
doesn't
you're
say-
definitely not.
It
No.
just got grub, you know? And so I think maybe that's part of why it worked well.
It does.
Yep.
Yeah, because I didn't have any of those problems. Not like with other laptops I have to, like, you know, fiddle around with this and fiddle around with that and get it to install properly. It just installed nicely. So if you just use a legacy mode, it's fine. But that kind of defeats the purpose of having the UEFI.
Right. All right, Thomas, you're up, sir.
Okay. So I had a really busy week this week and didn't really get to try Solus all that much. I did try the Budgie version and it looked really nice. It's about all I got to say.
Hey, that happens, man. Real life kicks in, and you know that's the way it is. So
Yeah.
no worries.
Okay.
All right, PZ, talk to us.
How long have you got?
We got 2 hours, brother. Well, hour and 45. So
Let's get all the really good stuff out of the way first of all. Yeah, Solus is a wonderful distribution. Yeah, it looks good. It runs well. Yes, there's a software limitation that you can get around them. Yes, there's an occasional bug trying to install Google from the software third-party repositories, but we all know the trick on that one. Hit the install button, walk away, come back, shut the software center, reopen it, and it's done. It's just a Python error where it won't open up. It won't refresh the screen while you're doing it. You either love Budgie or you hate Budgie. I'm indifferent. It's there. It works. I find the mixture between the settings and the Budgie settings a little bit confusing as to where you're going to find stuff. But overall, as a distribution, I like it. It works. It works well. I've been using it on and off from day one. The installer problems came from version 3. Prior to version 3, it installed like any other UEFI system. You could install it, you could pick where you wanted to put it, it would stay where it was told, it would work, it would appear in the menu. Nowadays, for me, UEFI and Solus is a 100% no-go. And I'll give you an example of what I did. I absolutely hosed every single hard disk on my system. I took out, via the BIOS, every SSD other than my first NVMe drive.
Yep.
And I went to Solus. There you go, boys. Get on with it. Install it. Fantastic. Picked one. 30 seconds later, and I mean it's like 95 seconds later, the thing is installed. It's ridiculously quick.
yes.
Fine. Went back into the BIOS. Opened them all. Opened up all my drives again. I hosed everything except for Peppermint, of course. Went into Peppermint via UEFI. Great, it worked. Went back to Solus via UEFI. Great, it worked. I installed Ubuntu 1904. Oh, where's Solus gone? No Solus in the UEFI. No Solus pickable. No Solus grub, because it doesn't do grub and EFI like most other sane OS distributions do. The only way I could get Solus back on my system is the good old-fashioned legacy mode, and boot up my USB in non-UEFI mode and install it like a normal distribution. Fire up pep, update grub, bingo, there's Solus. What have they done to their UEFI partition to make it so bad? And there's no other way to describe it other than bad. If you don't give it your whole hard disk, you've had it. So guys, if you're listening out there, please fix the installer, because you've got a fantastic distribution other than that one major bug. And for someone like me who jumps all over the place testing distributions out, I must be able to tell my system, SSD 2, partition 3, there's the UEFI, get on with it. And not have it go, well, hang on, I'm only going to show you the NVMe. No, don't touch that. That's my pet. Leave it alone. Well, that's the only option I've got, so you're not getting to get installed.
Right.
So that's the real big negative, UEFI. Everything else is fine. Put in a request for your software. Give them a couple of months. It will be up there.
Yep. And you'd be surprised at how much software is actually in the repos.
Yes.
It's 5,000% better than it was a year ago.
Yes.
Seriously.
Yeah,
agreed.
It's really, really good. Yeah.
Yep.
So that was my Solus journey. And for tonight, another little thing that frustrates the hell out of me out of Linux. Zoom, it's not in a repository, fine. Download the tarball, unpack it, run. No. Okay, install Solus, read this, do that, do the other, run Zoom. No. So I had to give up. I'm on PEP.
Did you try using the Chrome app?
Oh, I can't stand Zoom on the browser. Just
I know it's
doesn't work.
garbage, but I mean, it would have been a workaround to at least.
It would have been a workaround, but being as I'm a co-host and I've got all sorts of bits and pieces I can do, I don't think I would have had them on the browser. So as an ultimate, yes, you can do that, but that's, it should just work. It works on every other distribution you try it on.
Zeb is not just another pretty face. He's doing a lot of work behind the scenes here too. Just
Zoom Flatpak works really well. I've tried it twice now, and it works well on Solus as well. That's what I'm using now.
Why would I want to install 5 GB of Flatpak to get Zoom working?
Because Zoom.
Oh, because it works.
Yeah, but it's
you
fun.
need all the little doodads and knickknacks on the sides that you were talking about.
Yeah, if you've got a little 60 GB hard disk, you don't want to waste all that time and effort putting these Flatpaks on and chewing up your hard disk. 10 installs later, you've used up 20 gig. It's ridiculous.
Do they make discs as small as 60 anymore?
Of course they do.
Wow.
I don't know if I've got 52 terabyte behind me, but that's beside the point. Flatpaks are too large.
Yep. And it goes back to what you want to install on your system. We could argue till the cows come home, which is better, Flatpaks or snaps, but it all depends on the individual person and what they like. So,
yep.
All right. Shall we get into the no, let's go on. We'll wait till everybody's done. Get into the UEFI. Go ahead, Dan.
Jumping at the bit there. Yeah.
Go ahead, Dan.
I hate to hold you up. I mean,
no, I better not. I should just shut my mouth now and leave it go.
I thought you got it all out at the pre-show, but anyway. So I'm running an older system, so it's legacy mode, and I installed it alongside the Arch install I did last week, and that went fine. So in legacy grub mode, it works. So it's only UEFI, which is obviously more complicated, but yeah, you're right. I would have thought when they came out with the 4.0 release that they would have addressed a lot of those issues, but hopefully they're still working on it anyway. As far as the software, there really is a lot more than there once was, so it's almost a non-issue anymore. I guess Zoom is kind of a thing, but I mean, I don't know. Has anybody? Maybe we should ask for it, I guess.
Well, I had asked for it, but Zoom is a proprietary software.
Yeah.
So it's not exactly the highest on the list to package.
Right. Makes sense. It does make sense. Out of the box, I ran the Budgie version, and if I'm going to run anything, that's GTK type based system, Budgie is probably my go-to. And I like the implementation of Solus Budgie over like Ubuntu Budgie or any of the other ones. I think they've done a good job, and it's simple enough that it's comfortable for just about anybody to come in and use it. And it looks good. They've done some enhancements as far as the look over the way it was. I like it a lot, honestly. And yeah, so I mean, I had a good experience over the week. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and just to pick up what you said there about how good it looks, I forgot to mention that in my little the positive sides. It is a fantastic looking distribution now. It's one of the few that I've able to find where you can have a mixture of Qt apps and GTK apps, and not tell the difference. Exactly. Everything just looks cleanly melded in. It's just really great. I really like that side of it.
Yeah, that's hard to do in the DE to make it look the same. You really have to put some time into that. So they obviously have, and they've done a good job with it.
Great stuff. Paul, you're up, my friend. Did you try it? Paul, you there? Oh, he really throws me when he has his picture there because I think he's sitting there quietly listening, and it's just a picture, and he's in the background somewhere. So we'll come. Oh, there he is. You throw me every week with your picture, Paul. It catches me out every time.
And he's muted.
And you're muted, my friend. Oh, hang on. You got him. Oh, I hate it when it jumps like that. That's not. Okay, try now.
There we go.
Yeah.
You were muted by the host, it tells me.
Oh, right. Okay.
But yeah, I tried it real quickly. I didn't give it much time because I missed last week with the Gnome, so I tried the Gnome version, and I still don't like it. And the EO package install threw me off a little bit. I wanted to install from the command line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But other than that, it's a good project. But I wouldn't switch.
No. All right, nice. Colin, now we know you've studied it lots and lots.
Wait. Everybody listen to Colin.
Yes, I'm enjoying Solus at the moment. It's been a long time since I've had it. UEFI is working fine for me because I installed it on one machine. And I think that's probably the intentions of Solus, is because us technical guys like to dual boot. I can't see any new users probably doing that. So from a new user perspective, it probably wouldn't be a problem. But I do like some of the changes they've made here, and they've added some nice little things into their Raven menu. And also in the Budgie settings, they've now got a Raven menu setting within there. But one of the nice features I see here is an option in the Budgie desktop settings under Windows, which is disable nightlight mode when windows are full screen. So it automatically does that. If the window is full screen, it will disable the nightlight. So if you're watching a movie or anything like that, it automatically disables it. And when you drop the full screen, it will enable it again. So that's a nice little feature, I must say.
Nice.
And I do like all the settings they've got within the Budgie settings. They've added the Raven. You can show calendar widget. You can the power strip and all that, because that was missing. I remember the last time I tried it. So obviously they were implementing that at the time. So that's a nice little touch as well. So menu's still the same, but I think they've cleaned it up. They talk about how multiple instances of applications, Peter, in the menu. I'm not sure what that was all about, but they say they've cleaned that up. So,
what was your question here?
They did say that they had within the menu they had multiple applications showing in the menu, and now that they've sorted that. So, yeah, I think there used to be. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I do also like the little touches they've got with the selections down on the apps down the bottom when you right click, and you can choose to close all windows. You can choose to actually close individual applications on notifications as well. Yeah. So you can close them all. You can close individuals. You can close individual notifications under one application. That's a really nice touch as well. But on the panel, they've got where you can right-click and, open a new tab, open new window, new private window, add a new instance, close all windows. They've just add those nice little subtle changes that make the distro really nice to use. And if you've got an open app and you scroll your mouse window, it'll open it and close it. It'll minimize and maximize scrolling the mouse wheel. So that's a really, really nice little touch too. So I'm just really enjoying those nice little refinements that they've put into Budgie, and they've made a lot of good little changes, and they're doing an awesome job over there. I've tried the snaps and the flat packs. It'd be nice if they could implement the snaps within their software center. Maybe they're doing that, because I know they've been working on that for quite a while now. And the flat packs as well. I'm not sure if they can do that or not, because you do have in Ubuntu and all that where you can install the Gnome software implementation where it reads the flat packs in the software center. So, and they've also got the the caffeine mode as well, which is awesome, and you've got a timer on that. So that's awesome job as well. So I'm really enjoying this at the moment. So we'll see how we go with that. I'm sure other people have seen some other things. So that's my experience. I'm quite enjoying it.
Sorry, go on.
No, just one thing I did have. It did not show any of my network drives at all. Now, I did put that in my video, a fix for that. I did find something somewhere on a search on a forum where I had to change a couple of things within the config file to actually get it to show my network drives. And I believe it's a problem with certain modems, and it just happens to be my modem, which is one of them. So I don't know. Has anyone heard of a Fritzbox in America or in England, or is that just an Australian thing? Must be just sold in Australia. Then.
Yeah, it's definitely an Australian thing.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. All right, so it's the Fritzbox that's the issue, and but I've sorted that out, and I'm happy that that's working. So it took me a while to figure that, but I'm
so
happy.
overall, you had a good experience.
Yeah, I always have a good experience with Solus. I run it as my main for quite a while, and I said I'm not running it until Solus 4 comes out. I did not know I'd be waiting this long. But I haven't got it on my main yet, but I'm still running Linux Mint Cinnamon, but we'll see.
Cool.
Hey, Colin, the Solus Budgie popovers came in with 10.5, and as a long-term user, I love them. I love the features you can do on the popovers.
Yep, it's really nice, I must say.
Excellent. Dave, Mr. Arch, how did you get on with Solus?
Pretty well, actually. I took it in my laptop and sitting in a semi down in Nashville Monday evening, hotspotting through my iPad, put in the live disk, it booted right up, went into the install. The only issue I had with the install was I tried to go to the manual partitions and it wouldn't let me decide to format or anything. So I said, fine, take the whole disk. It installed like a dream. Booted right up, had no issues with it. The only problem I ever came across was trying to get Zoom installed and run. And I realized that some of the more esoteric apps that I use, like Sublime Merge, in addition to Sublime Text is in the repos, but Merge isn't. But I understand that that's not a common app. So that didn't bother me. It ran like a dream. I didn't even think of using a Flatpak for Zoom because I'm not even used to software centers. So Flatpaks and Snaps are like 2 generations ahead of me already. I'm like, I'm a crotchety old geek. I just, get off my lawn. But it's running on my wife's computer. It's doing fine. The only time I had any issues with it, ran through the install process on my main rig. And it ran through the process fine, but it rebooted into a black screen, which I think is probably due to my Nvidia drive. And I wasn't at that point, late in the week, willing to take the time to sort through those issues. But on my laptop, it was a dream. On my wife's computer, it's going to stay a dream. It's not for me, but it is a wonderful experience, and I truly enjoyed it and had no real issues with it.
Nice.
Cool.
I must say, the one thing I've never had a problem with Solus is the Nvidia stall. Do all your updates first, go and run there, and I forget what he called it, some doohickey or something or other, but it's their Nvidia installer. Click Nvidia, click the box above that you want all the third party stuff, and it just works. It's great as far as that's concerned. So yeah, that's really
the
cool.
Weird thing was it ran through the installer fine, unless I'm supposed to install the Nvidia drivers, before I run the installer. But I finished the installer, hit reboot, and it rebooted to a black screen.
Oh, so after the first install,
right?
Oh wow!
It never came up. It wasn't a matter of trying to get the drivers in. It just didn't boot into the desktop after the install.
And I guess the no mode set didn't work, or
that's what I figured I would have to do. But being late in the week, I wasn't willing. Having had a good experience on my laptop, I wasn't willing to fight with it on my main top. So I just threw my arch back on, and here I am.
Dave,
I get
you
it.
say a black screen. Do you mean a TTY?
No, black.
No, just a black screen cursor
Right.
top left hand
okay.
corner.
I mean, probably if I had hit, Control Alt F4 or F2, it would have brought up the TTY, and I could have logged in that way. But it was just, I had such a good experience on my laptop that I wasn't willing to spoil it by fighting and getting cranky with it on my main rig.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, Chris, you're up, my friend.
So other than muted by host here, unmuted.
You should be okay now again.
Anyway, yeah, I had a wonderful week with it. I was able to get Lazarus installed without a problem, and the FPC docs. That's an IDE for Pascal programming, the equivalent of Delphi, free version. And same thing with what happened with Dreamwolf. There is I had a problem with the installer as far as the partitioning was concerned. When I went to manual partition, when it told me to use gparted, so I went to gpart. I got everything set up the way I wanted to, and the installer didn't want to pay attention to that and told me no partitions were selected. I couldn't set the flags for boot flag, and others. So I just said, okay, do what you want to do with it, and everything worked great. It took me a couple Google searches for the EOPKG for the package manager, but once I found that, it was almost intuitive in how to get things running with that. And I really like I'm running the Budgie, and this is the first time I've run Budgie, and it's been I like it. It's not enough to pull me away from Fedora, but it's good. It's definitely going to be up at the top along with Salient, and I can get done what I need to get done in it. So I have not put NFS on there, so I don't know how it handles the network file system. Or Samba, for that matter. But from what I tested, it was pretty good.
All right. Yeah. Big Pod. What's happening, brother?
Yeah. Nothing really. It's just school and work was school. That's why actually in Dry Solus had a lot of work migrating my school databases from MySQL to Microsoft SQL because of a new professor, and yeah.
I understand you like Microsoft.
No, professor. I have a new professor that's from industry, and he is the company MS SQL, and because of that, he will teach us MS SQL. It
was a play on words, but I guess it's just. Joe, what's up? Yeah. Did you try Solus, Joe?
No, I did have intentions of maybe at least going to a VM. I'm still a little bit under the weather, but I wanted to come support the show tonight, so I've got one word for it called next.
Wow. Wow.
I wasn't up to it right this week, though.
Yeah, it's all good, man.
Good to see you back.
Thanks.
Steve, did you get to try Solus this week?
I am on it right now.
All right. Cool. So talk to us about it.
Actually, Peter will be very happy, and he's probably been praying that everything goes good. From the install went really good and really quick. I had no issues. I selected wipe everything and just install because it's the one thing on this laptop. Love the look. I mean, to me, it looks like Windows 10, or Windows 10 looks like Linux, as Peter says. Had no real problems. Once I had it installed, because this has an Nvidia card in it, I went and then installed the Nvidia drivers. Not a problem with that. The only problem that I had, and Peter had pointed out that this had been an issue with the third party. I was installing Google Chrome, and it looked like it got hung up. and it was there for a while. So I closed the software center, but it was installed. But Peter says that that's a known issue. So it's really not with Solus, I guess. The only problem that I can say that I had was I had been watching some YouTube video. I paused it, and usually I change the settings so I don't, it doesn't go to sleep or that. And I didn't. So I guess it went into suspend, and I had to reboot the kitty cat. Huh?
Sorry. All I see is a tail wagging.
I'm like,
It's big tail coming in.
Couldn't concentrate, Steve. Sorry.
He's hypnotizing us, you know. And I couldn't, no matter what key I hit, I couldn't get it back, anything to come back up. So I had to reboot. That's the only issue that I had. But I looked at it as a newbie, you know, starting out. With it, I've had no problems. It looks really nice. It's probably, it is definitely a very polished desktop. Will it take me away from my Peppermint? No. I mean, there's just something about the workflow that I have with Peppermint and all that with XFCE that just, for me, is really good. But it is very nice. I haven't had any problems with it. And I installed it on Tuesday, I think, and been kind of running it in between since. Zoom that I got on here right now is through the Chrome store. So I don't know how I'm coming across. The only thing else I had to do was to get the webcam to work right was install the GTK UVC view, and because I was on toss last night and it was looking kind of bad until I installed that. But otherwise, I mean, nice distro, Peter. But it won't like my Peppermint.
So all in all, it was a good experience.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm on it right now, and I've been on it all day. I was on it all day yesterday, and good experience.
All right, Scrapjaw in the house.
Oh, how you doing?
What up?
So the one thing I do remember from using Solus before was having to utilize one single disk, and that did not change.
No.
So, but I installed it and I messed around a little bit, and it has some of the software I use, but I still can't put the KX Studio repos in because they're different back-end distributions. So
yeah,
but it's all right. It's stable, and I have a 4790K. That's a 5th gen i7 with the 1060 in it. I didn't mess with any graphics drivers, but what was there ran. So
that's
good. It was solid.
That's good, brother. Popey in the house.
Hello. I don't know if my audio is working, so do let me know.
It's working perfectly.
Hooray! I had to switch desks, so you're seeing a completely different view. I normally sit there. So I didn't test it this week, but I do use Solus on a regular basis in a VM for testing stuff that we make. And I thought about it this week, and it struck me every so often someone will ask me that question: if you weren't using Ubuntu, what would you use? And usually my answer is Debian, but actually I'm leaning towards Solus simply because I love it. It's so elegant and simple and fast booting, and I know I can reach out to the specific developers if I need to get something fixed, and that's actually a really big thing. Like, I know people feel that's a big thing when they reach out to me and they say, "Hey, Alan, there's this thing, and I know you work for Canonical, and can you help sort this out?" And if you do that, I will do my best, and I will go and find the right person. It's often not me that fixes it; it's often someone else. And I feel like Solus is the same kind of thing, that I could reach out to Josh or someone else or poke someone in IRC, and I feel like something will get done. And there aren't many distros where I feel like stuff would get done if I spoke to the right person. I feel like a lot of distros are opaque black boxes or green boxes or whatever color box you want. whereas Solus feels like the kind of enthusiastic bunch of people who, if I had a problem, I could go to them and they would help. And whenever I run Solus in a VM, which I do relatively often, I get irritated by how nice it is, which is a thinly veiled compliment, I guess. I don't reboot my systems very often, and so boot speed for me is not a primary concern. But when I boot Solus and it boots super fast, I get a little envious because I know my systems don't boot that fast. So,
yep. Look, there's no question about it that Solus is a great operating system. Okay. I talked to Ike a couple years ago about Solus, and from that point on, you could see there was a place that they were going, a direction they were going. And they've continued that direction even after Ike. So it is a great distribution, and it is going places. But I will have to say that I did have issues with installing it. And I really, really wish that they would fix certain glaring problems. And they're glaring only because the fact that the distribution itself is so well made and so good at so many things that when it falls over on these certain issues, that's where I have, it's almost a bigger issue now because they are so good. And the EFI thing, the UEFI install thing is one of those issues that for the life of me, I just wish that would be like something at the top of the list to fix. And maybe it's not on the radar of the devs. I don't know. I didn't get to talk to them about it. But maybe it's not on the radar for them to fix it. Maybe they don't feel it's an issue. After reading, like Peter, you sent that UEFI instructions in the Telegram group. Okay, and I'm reading that, and I'm reading the documentation on what they're saying about UEFI, and they're saying that you should be installing it UEFI if you can, because that's the right way to do it. But they're also saying that, you know, like it picks up the first ESP by default, and that's the way the hardware should be the one monitoring the grubs and whatever systems you have on your hardware. So they're saying you should, like, if for me, I have to hit the F8 key when I boot up to bring up the list of what partitions or what installs I have on the system. But I guess what my point is, there's not one other distribution that you have to do that for if you install it. Every other distribution allows you, whether it's the right way or the wrong way to go about it, every other distribution allows you to pick where the grub is or doesn't enforce the default of the first ESP.
Is that entirely true though, Rocco? Doesn't Pop OS do kind of the same thing though?
Well, I've never had an issue with Pop OS doing that. I use the Nvidia disk, like the Nvidia ISO that they have, so I don't know if that's any different on the main one, but I've never had an issue with Pop OS taking over the grub, removing any other entries, or anything like that.
Yeah,
well,
and you see,
something they fixed, because I thought early on it used to do that.
Yeah.
It used to kind of steal the grub.
And therein lies the single biggest problem with the Solus install. It has no concept of grub when you're in UEFI mode. Yeah, you can install most other distributions. I can go back to PEP, I can do a grub update, and they will all be listed. Solus is not in the list. Solus doesn't want to install grub if you've gone down to UEFI. Legacy mode, it works perfectly, but going down the UEFI mode, grub is not supposed to be there. And like you said, Rocco, whether it's the right way or the wrong way, it's the way that everybody else is doing it. So why are they being so different and so obstinate to the extent that it now doesn't work for anybody else? And then,
I kind of feel like, knowing how hard an installer is, like the installer is, it's often your first experience of a distro, right? And part of the problem is installers are really hard because you've got people like Rocco with 1,000 partitions across 100,000 disks, and then you've got someone else who's got exactly one disk and just wants to do the install, right? And you've got to have a user interface and all the framework underneath that allows you to cater for both Rocco and my mum and every single person in between. And that's really hard. Which, like, when you think of how frustrating it is to install Windows, and how frustrating it is to install most of its distributions, actually, I'm not entirely surprised they'll make opinionated decisions about what they support, what they include, and what they don't include. And it might be frustrating for some people, but I think with the small team of developers that they have, I don't think it's unreasonable that they like exclude certain features from the install.
But you raise a valid point, though, too, Alan, because I was thinking the same thing. Is if you think about it, everybody that's really kind of got an issue with this is because they're dual booters. If you're doing it as a single install, it's kind of a non-issue, isn't it? Really?
Oh, right. Is that the case? It's just like a non-issue on a single install?
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. When I mean, I think you wasn't here when for the first part. Right. I totally dismantled my system, other than the NVMe drive, and in typical Solus fashion, 95 seconds later, the thing's back up, rebooted. It's brilliant, and it's literally, for me, it's a 95-second install from when I've picked all my bits and pieces and I go. It's the fastest thing I've ever come across. It's ridiculous. It's brilliant.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And then turned on my. You're gone.
I've never seen this issue, because I only ever installed in a VM, which is a blank machine.
Yeah. So well, then let me tell you what happened. I then opened up all my hard disks again, rebooted into PEP, did the grub update, and I know Solus is not going to be there, but I can F8, pick Solus, and go into Solus. Wonderful. Install Ubuntu 1904. Poof, Solus has gone. Nowhere to be seen. It's not in the UEFI. And it's not in anybody's grub, because they don't care about grub. And I understand why, because for them, it's install Solus, just use it. And that was the problem. I couldn't get Solus back again. So I thought, I'll reinstall it. Went to reinstall it, and it wants to put it on a drive that I don't want it to go to. I can't pick where to install it.
Did you try and check what's it called, through some program or with the grub to check the whole...
Grub customizer? Care about
grub customizer to check all the...
It won't work.
He doesn't care about grub. If you boot UEFI Solus, it's not interested in grub in any way, shape, or form. Yeah, because that's not the way UEFI works.
So I guess my point is, it's a shame that part of it doesn't work. And again, I'll say that if you're just going to install it to one drive, it works perfect. Okay, if you're going to let it have one drive and let it install the way it wants to, like Zeb said, it's going to be fast. It's going to be up and running in 2 minutes at the latest, and you'll be fine. But if you have any type of partitioning going on, as far as different partitions for different operating systems, you're going to run into problems. And maybe that doesn't sound like a big deal, but we're going to talk about an article coming up about distributions for beginners, and most people that try Linux are not trying it on drive. People who are going to try Linux are going to be trying it. They're going to be maybe installing it alongside of Windows, or have other things on the system that they're going to install, and that may end up really bad, which could be a very bad experience for Linux itself. So
from my experience, Rocco, when you dual boot Solus with Windows, it works perfect. It's got a nice little slider. You can choose how big and small you want the partitions to be, and it doesn't seem to have a problem dual booting with Windows.
Well, for me, my instance was I have 2 NVMe drives and a couple solid state drives, so it completely skips the NVMe drives and goes straight to SDA. So as far as for the grub is concerned. So what actually is going to happen was it was going to install Solus to my partition where I wanted it to install it to, but it was going to install the grub on one of the Fedora partitions on a completely separate drive. And that's a problem, because if I ever remove that drive, Solus isn't going to boot. Or if that drive dies, my whole Solus install on this drive goes. So it's just a bad thing that, to me, is something that takes away from such a great distribution. And can I say one more thing?
No.
Sure.
It's your show.
I know they're working on it, okay? The other glaring thing to me is the third-party repository stuff. To me, that third-party repository should be removed until it works the right way. It should be removed. Everybody who runs Solus knows that you really shouldn't install it through them buttons in the third-party repository. But somebody who's new to Solus is not going to know that, and they're going to run into issues, and that also puts a bad mark on Linux and Solus. You know, I was told by a couple of people that the recommended way is to go to the third-party repository page on Solus website and install it through the current terminal commands.
Yeah.
Well, to me, why is that not even? I mean, like, why? I know they're working on it. I've already been told that, you know, they're working on the third-party repository, and they're going to. Who knows what they're going to do with it? But to me, like I said, why not just remove it for the moment until you get it to the point where you want to get it to? Why not just remove that button that says install and just put a link to the terminal commands to install it? That would look so much better than having a button there that will frustrate people when everybody knows that it doesn't work properly.
Yeah,
Or you've got a 50-50 chance of it working properly, yeah.
They could have a video on their website too, I reckon, in this third-party area, just to explain how to install that. I think would be handy, so new people can just follow the video. I think
but
that
the problem is, Colin, new people got to know that video's there. New people that are going to install Solus are going to go to the software center to install software. And they're going to see the third-party repositories, and they're going to see that they can just hit a button to install it.
Just have a welcome screen and have a link to other software.
Yeah.
Right there, you're done.
I'm talking about what you're talking about. If you remove the third party, but have a link there that takes you to the third party software center in Solus help page, and then have a video instructing how to do it, would probably be better experience than the button, because I had the same experience as Steve.
Or leave it the way it is and let them learn like we did that Linux is supposed to hurt.
That's no good.
Well, okay, so Kevin says in chat, you got to look at the smaller projects with an 80-20 rule. So, as long as 80% of it works, it's a good user experience. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all, especially with the third-party repositories, because that is software that was specifically put in there because users are looking for that software, because it's not in the repos, and they know people want that specific software, like Google Chrome, for instance. They know people are looking for that. And when you know somebody's looking for that and you give them something that's not working, that's very frustrating. That's a bad user experience.
So yeah, I know this Big Daddy guy that made a script to install Chrome, and it worked. And it worked. So I mean, right? If you had a link, if you had a button to that, it would take care of it for you, right?
Other than
right?
What are the other major products in the third-party repo? I never installed anything from there.
WPS Office, I think, is in there.
No, they've removed that.
Have they removed it?
They've removed that. Yeah, because of an
Sublime.
unenforced.
Sublime is in there.
Yeah, Sublime Text is in there.
So, Colin, can you bring it up and read it out for us?
So basically, it's a bunch of proprietary software, right?
Yeah. Android tool.
Yeah, Steam. Or is Steam in the main one now?
Steam's in the repos.
Studio. Google Earth, Google Chrome Dev, Google Chrome Beta, Git Kraken, Google Earth, Google Talk Plugin, InSync, Idea, Mendeley, Desktop, Money Dance, Ocean Audio, Spotify, Sublime Text, Viber, WebStorm.
Okay, so these are all proprietary software.
Pretty much, yeah.
And as a small Linux distribution, you can't expect the developers of the Linux distribution to support third-party proprietary software. And I appreciate you're caught in a trap as a Linux distribution. You want to provide the software that users want, and often that software is evil proprietary software like Google Chrome, which we all know lots of people install, and we all know there are free software alternatives, but some people prefer Chrome, right? And the same goes for text editors. We all know there are free software text editors, but some people prefer Sublime Text. So that's why the developers of Solus are doing some effort to provide this software to users, because they know users are clamoring for it.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, Alan.
But it's hard for them to do that. And I'm not sure what the technical reasons why this stuff fails, but I know we've had trouble in the past trying to, like, you've got to balance that whole, Richard Stallman end of the scale, freedom software, but the other end of the scale, users actually want to play music from Spotify. And,
Alan, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I totally agree that there's no way they should be expected to maintain third-party software. My point is, if you're going to put it in there, it should work. If it doesn't work, then you shouldn't really put it in there. Or at least, like I said, the simple solution is just to give them the terminal commands. You need to install every time. When that's the recommended way. They'll tell you that's the recommended way to install it. Then just give them the terminal commands.
And you're still trying to do a balancing act between, the perception that if you have to use the terminal, it's a bug, and the fact that they have a graphical store. The counter argument would be, well, if you're giving me terminal commands to install Chrome, yet you have a graphical store, why on earth am I being told to open a terminal and run commands like some kind of mainframe operative from the 1960s?
They could have the button run a script. They could have the button run a script that somebody wrote.
Right. Well, I mean, I tried NX last week, and he's got a bunch, in his software. He got Chrome in there, and it's probably wget, but it works, and it works installed really good last week when I tried it.
But whatever's behind that button, there's a button somewhere on a screen. Whatever's behind that button, someone needs to QA it, right? Whether that's some internal process in Solus, or if it's a script that a third party has made, someone at some point needs to make sure that when you press that button, the software is installed. And Solus is a small team. And there are some great minds right now, both contributing to this YouTube video and great minds watching this YouTube video. And I'm sure the Solus guys would welcome contributions from people who say, hey, this thing doesn't work, and here's a way you could fix it, and here's my code to help fix it. They would welcome that with open arms, I'm sure.
Speaking to Josh before on this subject, it's something to do with, is it Python that possibly redraws the screen, and it's not keeping up to date with what's happening in the background. So the simple solution is click the button, walk away, come back, shut the software center, reopen it, and it says installed. It just doesn't refresh in front of you.
Or programmatically brute force refresh the screen more often. Or, there are programmatic ways of doing this that don't involve you getting up out of your chair and walking away and making a cup of tea. We have computers automated now.
But I thought Python was a big no-no in Solus. Why are they using Python on the
so it might not be Python. It's probably something else, but it was the only programming name I could think of.
They are.
So when I say these things, like when I said about the UEFI and I say about the third-party software, I'm not ripping Solus. There's a lot of work that goes into this, and I'm sure that there's many other features they're trying to tackle besides small issues like this. I just think these are glaring issues, maybe just to me, and to a new user, I think they would be glaring. What can I say?
They're part of the user interface, so they stand out.
It cannot be easy, because when I was using Fedora, they've got like what's that one in Fedora? The secondary third-party stuff you put in Fedora.
Fusion.
RPM Fusion, and then they had one for the Google Chrome. I think it was Google Chrome or something. That was Zoom. And that took forever to install. Eventually it did. I thought it was hanging, but it does. So these things, proprietary things, cannot be easy for a lot of distros, I would say.
I don't know. I never had a problem with Zoom or with the non-free repos, especially like VLC and stuff like that. That stuff usually just kicks right in. Haven't had. It could be the video drivers too, because I use the Intel chips that are on the motherboard anyway. I don't have a card or anything like that.
Yeah.
All right, Eric, you're here.
Hello.
You made it.
I made it just in time, as a matter of fact.
Dude, talk to us, brother.
It's like it was planned. All right, so good and bad on Solus. I'll go with the good. The good is it is, to me, taking Gnome's code base and adding a level of polish on top and adding back the things that I miss as a user. So tray icons, obviously. Raven is fantastic with all the notifications and the user settings and the calendar, very well thought out. I like the Budgie desktop settings, where it's sort of like what I would equate to the Gnome tweaks tool, but very specific to Budgie itself. Little things like, I love that there's an option for disabling the compositor on full screen windows. It's a small thing, but that's a really smart idea, especially if you're looking at gaming and things that need that sort of graphical tilt to them. The theming, I thought, in this release was really spot on. Just a lot to like. It's very fast. The boot up times, the way it uses the hardware is excellent. So a lot of good. And I would say the most glaring bad to me is the way that they handle the UEFI booting. I'm sure everybody's already commented on that, so I'm not going to go into great detail. I think it's confusing. I think there's a technical reason to do it the way they do it, but much like it's an argument that's difficult to make to an end user, where you can say technically it's supposed to be this way when you're handling UEFI and not having grub involved. But as an end user, it makes it infinitely more difficult to deal with. I know there's argument around that point. I will continue to stand on that. If I have to hit a key in the 3 seconds that I can see my boot logo, that's not a great user experience. So, but otherwise, I mean, I think it has a lot of merits. It's a great system. I agree that the software manager isn't perfect, but show me one that is in any system, frankly. So I would say 75% good, 80% good, and 20% some rough edges. Popey makes a good point, for anyone who used it and found things, this is a good time to give feedback. And those guys take it seriously. And I know there's a couple things that I'll probably log and share with them, but I've been very happy with the work they've done. So that's my take.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Benjamin, welcome. No, you're muted, my friend. Hang on a minute. Let me just get let's try that again.
How about now?
Yeah, that's better. We can hear you now.
Awesome.
So did you try Solus?
I did for like a few seconds. Well, no, not because there's anything wrong with it. I just don't have a lot of free time with work and real life getting in the way. But I did give it a fair go. I heard you guys talking about how it borked up your bootloaders. The last time before I tried it this time, I did install it on the same machine, separate hard drive. I don't even use grub on my main system. I use system D boot, I think it's called, and it still borked with that. It removed Arch from my bootloader. I had to go in and manually retweak the bootloader. I got it working again, but this time I made sure to install on a separate machine completely to make sure it didn't do that again to me. Other than that, it was a pretty good experience. Everything seemed to work like properly the way they said it should, except for I noticed that it wanted to take its sweet time installing Chrome through the software center. It eventually got it done, but yeah, I have to say I had a pretty good experience with it. I love Budgie. Budgie is a very good desktop environment, very unique. I think it's what Gnome 3 should have been. So yeah.
Nice. Good to hear. You're muted, Rocco.
Really? Why you mute me, Deb?
Probably because the list jumps. Every time someone new comes in and I try to do something, the list jumps and you're the top of the list. So,
all right. So this article I'd like to really get to talk about. We did go a little bit over in the hour with Solus, but I think it was worth it.
Absolutely. And that's why I muted you, this article.
Right. So
but go on.
Here is the article I just posted in YouTube chat, and it is the 7 best Linux distros for beginners. And one of the reasons why I say about the stuff on Solus is because Solus is on this list. And when you have new users and they have issues like this with the install or with a third-party repository, it doesn't give them a good experience. And in order to keep users, you're going to have to give them a good experience. All right, about this article, the title is 7 Best Linux Distros for Beginners. And I think the first problem with this article is the number 7. Because there shouldn't be a number there. It should be Best Linux Distro or 1 or 2 for beginners. We should be saying, this is the one you want to try if you're a beginner. This is the one that works the best. I don't think there should be 7. And I have a few problems with the choices that are on here. Like, I mean, Peppermint, really. I mean, no, that's not the problem. But Manjaro is number 6 on here. And I know there's a lot of Manjaro users out there. And I know that they love Manjaro. And Manjaro has great things going for it. But it should not be on a list for beginners. Sorry, it just shouldn't.
Objection.
Talk to us.
The problem is everyone has a different definition of what a beginner is, right? So my very first Linux distribution was Coral Linux in 1995 or something like that. And I got it on a CD in a book, and I was a beginner. And that was a distribution. That was one of the options to me. Now we have lots of options, and the term beginner can mean absolutely anything. It can mean someone who is certified as a Microsoft professional, or someone who worked behind a Genius bar in an Apple store, or it could be my mum, right? There's everywhere in between. My mum, who's had 3 mentions so far, and experts, but experts that are not experts in Linux. So these are people who are new to Linux. And I don't think it's a bad thing that you give people a list and say, knock yourself out, try them all out. Like, someone tries out Mint and they discover that they don't like the update mechanism, or they don't like the lack of something in that distro, they switch to something else. All right, what's the next one on the list? Because it's not as if this list is, here are the top 7 supercars you need to buy this year, right? It's not $750,000 investments that you need to make. It's 7 ISO images you download and 7 chunks of maybe an hour, maybe 2 or 3 hours that you need to invest in to get a successful operating system on your device, right? So giving people a number of options so that they can find something they're comfortable with, feel at home, or feel this is awful, I want to try something else, I think is a great idea. So my first argument is 7 is not enough. It should be more.
So I think
my counter argument is that the distro that you talked about was not on this list. Okay. And this is not to say that there shouldn't be lists to, hey, if you want to try Linux, you can try these. This is a best Linux distro for beginners, and beginners to me are not people who are Windows specialists or the other ones you mentioned. Beginners are beginners to Linux. They don't know anything about Linux.
Right.
So
someone who's an expert in Windows and has been developing software in .NET Studio for 10 years is not an expert on it. Might not be.
He's not a beginner.
But
that doesn't constitute a beginner.
No, he's a beginner in Linux, but he's not a beginner in computer terms. So I think what Rocco's talking about is your 95% of your Windows users out there who wouldn't have a clue.
Yeah, the perception is when I think everybody generally thinks when you think beginners for Linux are people who are not necessarily tech savvy and are coming to this completely from Windows, not necessarily even Mac. There might still be some Mac, who knows, but the reality of it is it's mostly Windows users who are looking for something different, who are not very tech savvy. Because I think, to your point, Alan, what would happen is if you have that Windows expert, they're going to do their homework a little bit and learn a little bit about the distros before they do it. If you get somebody that's completely oblivious,
no, don't agree with that.
No. Well,
but they're tech savvy enough to work around the problems that they would encounter.
I get your point. The thing is if they run into some problems, they're not going to necessarily maybe be turned off to it. Like somebody who's never used it before, is not tech savvy, tries it and goes, "Oh my God, I hate this. It's terrible," because they picked the wrong one out of the gate.
And there are use cases, Alan, for what you're saying, as far as there are people out there who are not beginners to computing, but that's not the majority of people out there who are going to try Linux. Like, I'm talking from a real world experience of talking to people to say, do you want to try Linux? Who never heard of it. Don't even, you know what I mean? They barely use their computer. They just browse the web, basically. And you're trying to convert them to Linux. These are the people I'm talking about in my frame of mind.
Right. And those are the people that are on the fence even. They've already got problems. They've got some kind of pain they're trying to solve with the machine they already have. Those are the people you have to think about you're talking to, because they're people that are like, what? I have to do something different? And they turn around and walk the other way.
They're already...
We're not even talking about them people.
Yeah,
they're already frustrated.
Yeah,
already frustrated with what they're dealing with, and then we're expecting them to, be knowledgeable. Not necessarily.
Well, I think too that a list is good because like certain distros might work better with different hardware. Like someone might say, here, install this distro. You install it, boom, a component isn't working. So, okay, here, let me try this next one over here, and then boom, it's working. So this is what I'm going to go with. I think sometimes a list can be good for that too.
Let me give you an example. Let's suppose someone is Rocco's definition of beginner, right? Never used Linux before. Is not what you would call like a developer. You might let's suppose that person you all know who knows quite a lot about computers isn't a Linux person, but is the person who removes viruses from your friends' computers, right? From their Windows PCs, right? Everyone has a friend who can help them get rid of viruses from a Windows computer, right? And they've heard about this Linux thing and they come to it. There are some people whose personality is that they really want the very latest of everything. They want the latest version numbers. They want the bleeding edge of everything. And Ubuntu is on that list of 7 popular distros that you could use. And if you gave them the latest LTS release of Ubuntu, which is right now a year old, and they then chat to someone else, and someone else who's running Manjaro says, oh, I've got the very latest kernel, I've got the latest AMD drivers, I've got the latest Nvidia drivers, I've got the latest of everything. They might feel like I've made the wrong choice. I've chosen the wrong distro because I'm a beginner. I kind of know about Windows, but this Linux stuff is all a bit of a mystery to me. And there are plenty of people like that around. And their profile, like if you were to summarize it in one word, is beginner. But it's more than that. There's plenty of other ways to describe that person. They're adventurous. They're excited about new software.
Yeah.
Whereas someone else might be described as one word of beginner, but they might also be described as conservative, or safe, or other words that mean someone who would rather use an LTS release of Ubuntu, or rather than Manjaro. So I still don't think that you can use one word like beginner to describe everyone, because they're all completely different.
I'm sure that all Big Pod, you've been waiting. Go ahead.
First of all, I'm going to ask about the list, the number of choices and all that. First of all, while yes, Alan's reasons were all valid, I also think that there should be only one definitive distro that is for beginners, for those who enter Linux. Because one of the problems a lot of users who want to try Linux have is there is a lot of choice. And if they even ask the best distro for a beginner into Google, they will still give them choice. We need to give them a definitive choice. And another thing, why is Manjaro on the list? Sorry, but even if the beginner is a Windows expert, sorry, rolling release, even though it's kind of a rolling release, like Manjaro isn't for any type of beginner. First, you should put him in something like Ubuntu or Mint, just so he can get used to Linux as it is before he gets into the crazy world of rolling release. Because, to be told, I know what it is like, because since I live every day in it, and it's sometimes can be hectic. So.
But Alan, you talked about that one guy that installs, or removes the antivirus from your Windows computer. Those types of people who may be new to Linux won't have a big problem if they go and install a distro and then they find another one that has the latest release, something they want. They won't have a problem, to me, going and installing another distro. It's the 95% of the other people that just want maybe something different besides Windows, that you're gonna tread very carefully, because if they have a bad experience right away, they're liable to just walk away and never try it again.
Yep.
Maybe. And I've certainly met people in the last 5 years who, when I talk about Linux, they say, oh, yeah, I tried that 10 years ago. Is it still all about the terminal? Is it still...
I heard the same thing, dude.
Right. Yeah. And there are people who try stuff out and then they don't like it. They don't like the experience. And I honestly think for those people, it doesn't matter which distro you give them, they'd be like, oh, this is horrific.
Yes.
So it's not Windows, so it's horrible.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm just going
to
pick up something. Yeah, I just want to pick up on something that Big Pod said, that Manjaro shouldn't be on the list. Yeah. Manjaro has made fantastic inroads in bringing Arch to the masses. Okay. So for me, I would be more than happy if somebody liked the look and feel of Manjaro XFCE to install it on their machine and just tell them once a week, click that button. If you have any issues, because it just works. Everybody was moaning about this breaks, that blows up, this doesn't work, that doesn't work. You install Manjaro and just run it. It works.
Yep. No, it doesn't. I live in it.
You're such a liar, Zeb.
It does. Manjaro works. You're going to get problems occasionally.
Oh, you get a lot of problems.
I would not trust a beginning user with Manjaro. Period. End of story. Yeah. I would not trust a beginning user with Manjaro because if something breaks, they're going to immediately go straight back to Windows because they're expected to fix it themselves. Whereas with something more like Ubuntu or Linux Mint, things don't break nearly as often. And sometimes you're not even expected to fix some of those things. You're expected more often to go to the community for help.
while community on Manjaro is really, really, really great. It's still even isn't in the new user, especially if it's someone that doesn't actually know anything about computers, they won't go looking into forums and stuff like that because they won't know that there is fixes there.
And
you
you guys must be really unlucky then, because Manjaro for me, I can install it and just run it.
Yeah, all you guys ragging on Arch and Manjaro sound to me like the same ones going, Linux? Yeah, I tried that 10 years ago. Is it still all about the terminal?
Don't get me wrong, Arch and Manjaro have their place in time. It's just when we're talking about a new user, you don't turn them loose with Arch.
Well, look,
why?
Philip and Bernhard were awesome. I talked to them. They have a great community behind them.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, they definitely do.
Manjaro itself is awesome,
Yes.
but it should not be given to a new user because they are not going to know how to fix things when they go wrong.
They're not going to know how to
Are they going to know how to fix it? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
They're not going to know how to fix any distro.
If you want to give Arch or Manjaro,
Correct. They are not going to know how to fix any distro, which means you give them the one that has the least problems.
And I'm telling you, as a Windows admin for many years and for dealing with my family, if you think people are good about doing updates, you're kidding yourself. They do it as much as they can, and the surest way to break a rolling release is to not do updates.
Absolutely. And I've experienced that firsthand in real life. And they do, because Windows users are so used to Windows doing everything for them. And that is the problem. And there's a challenge within itself, Rocco. Let's pick a distro, everyone pick a different distro and see if you can run that without even opening the terminal. You know what I mean? Because the terminal scares the heck out of new people. I'm sure.
I have a question about that.
Go ahead, Frank.
So there's two things. One about the terminal and one about the number of distros. So for a Windows user, are they really that afraid of the terminal? Because if you use Windows, you go to support, and it says you have an issue with your DHCP stuff. You open the terminal, you go to the command line, and you type, what is it, ipconfig in Windows / and that is the instruction that you get online. You get in Windows forums.
Hold on, one at a time.
Copy paste, and that's all they know to do.
Yes. But let's back up for 1 second. You're talking about people who are willing to go find the solution, number one, on the internet, and number two, are willing to open that terminal and try it. Most users on Windows are not even going to consider that. You're going to have, I was a Windows user for a long time, but I was also editing the registry. I was also tweaking my system as much as I could. I was open to saying that. We're talking about this stuff. Like, Frank, you just mentioned DHCP and everything. That is Greek to 95% of the Windows users out there. They don't even know what that means and wouldn't even never heard of it before. We're blessed to be able to see all of this technology, to research it, to have fun with it, and we get so used to it that we think it's second nature to everybody, but 95% of the people out there don't even know what that is.
But Alan is correct.
Alan is come by, we can disable them.
So my mother-in-law is your archetypal non-technical user. She has an iPad and a MacBook Air and an iPhone. And she, when she gets frustrated with something, will search online. So she had a problem today where she was trying to do something in her online banking, and it was sending her a text message or phoning her, and the phone call wasn't coming through. And she was trying to debug this herself, and she went online and did a search for, various things, and ended up in an online community and posted a question because she was that frustrated. She's not a technical person. She's clever enough to sign up for some forum somewhere and ask people a technical question. And if someone gave her an answer, she would likely copy and paste it. It's not the fact that she knows or doesn't know DHCP. It's not the fact that she knows or doesn't know what a terminal is. It's the fact that these people have a problem. They're looking for a solution, and the solution that someone provides them is press these buttons in this order, and that might be open a window, or it might be open a terminal, or whatever. For them, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether it's a scary black window where they type commands that sometimes they put a slash next to the word and it means it's a syntax error and they don't understand why. Like, it doesn't matter to them. They just want to, the goal that they want to achieve is fix this problem.
Right.
And I don't think the terminal is as much of a scary place for Windows users because they don't see it as a thing. They see it as a vehicle to getting to the solution. And if a web page, whether it's a Microsoft web page or a forum, says, press these buttons, do this thing, a terminal appears, type this other thing, your problem is solved, they will then close that web page, close that window, and then forget it ever existed.
Not really. Look, I know a guy who is proficient in computers, and I'm saying proficient. He knows to do quite some stuff with computer. And first time he used terminal or command prompt in Windows, first thing he found the solution, internet, everything. He had to use the command prompt. First time he opened it, first thing he did, he grabbed his phone, he called me, Primoz, I opened this black box. Is that okay? It says command prompt. Is that command prompt? It's a black box. And I said, yes, it is. That's command prompt. That's correct. And that was it. Basically, and he still closed it and asked me if I can come there and fix it for him, even though he was a schoolmate of mine in IT school.
Right, and
sorry,
basically,
that's the reality of normal users.
No. That's the reality of a class of user. That you've basically proved my point. Is that there are lots of different people out there who all have different experiences, and some people, they open a terminal, they go, freak out. But the point is that they have a technical person, you, that they could call in order to get a bit of confidence that that thing is okay to do. And this is why I find it really frustrating when people talk about Linux being hard and no one will help them. Like with Windows, it's hard and they have
no one will help them.
Problem is that guy sits next to me in computer school.
Right.
But the hardest fact about troubleshooting any computer, it doesn't matter whether you're Windows, Mac, or Linux, is if somebody gets into it, runs into a problem, doesn't stop and ask for help the minute that happens, and they try fixing it themselves, then you got to try to figure out and see if you can get them to backtrack on what they did. The simplest, easiest adapting people to Linux are people who have probably never been on a computer. You get an 80-year-old person who's never been on a computer, wants to try one, you put Linux in front of them, they're not going to have a preconceived notion. But you get somebody who's going from Windows to Mac, if they're willing to try a Mac, Linux is going to be just a similar experience because there's a lot of similarities to it.
So this discussion came up. Sorry.
Go ahead, Eric.
I was just going to say, so in the after show last week, this discussion came up about specifically around Windows 7 end of life, and is that going to be an influx for users? And some people were saying no, and some people were saying yes. And it came down to basically what Alan's saying is that if there's a technical minded person out there that did not want to upgrade to Windows 10, you're pretty likely to see that type of person coming into Linux and exploring their options. Now, I don't agree that they're going to try 7 of them and give them 2 hours of their time a piece and give, basically 2 work days worth of time to that. Maybe not. So to me, the ultimate list would be what level of experience do you have, right? Because the best voyage into Linux for someone might be Linux from scratch. If there's someone that is like a high technology, programming, they may want to know the nuts and bolts and the guts of it. They want to have a tiling window manager. None of these have tiling window managers. It's not even mentioned, right? So there's a whole universe of options out there, which is the blessing and curse of the GNU/Linux world. It's wonderful. And so lists like this, so where I see this as being irresponsible and where I think Rocco has a point is that term beginner, and we can quibble over terms, let's not quibble over who killed who or whatever we want to bring into this. But basically the idea is you got to identify the audience you're talking to. And if this is a non-technical person, then you say, go to Mint, go to Ubuntu, go to something that's not a rolling distro, go to something that's stable. They have great forums, and lead them to that, right? If it's a technical person, then you tell them why it has technical merit. This is a great distribution because it has all the developer tools built in. Fedora is a great developer, release, and that the normal user may not like Fedora, but someone like that, perfect. So anyway, I'm not trying to drag out the point here. I think what needs to happen is you have to identify your audience and talk to that person. And there's no reason you couldn't have one distro versus 70 distros. It's just, who am I talking to?
This article needs to be based on defining beginner before it even starts. That's what needs to happen.
The thing is, it's just presented as a flat list. There's no pre-qualification. There's nothing that says, are you what if you're an Android developer? Like you're a beginner with Linux and you've developed on Android, for Android on Windows. Or what if you're a gamer? Or what if you're someone who is 14 years old and
what
plays
if you're packaging snaps?
Right. All of these things.
Right.
Whatever it is, having some pre-qualification and making an article which had some kind of way for the user to be able to say, oh yeah, I identify with that criteria, I'll go down that path. And it doesn't have any of that because it's just like every other listicle article on the internet. It's just, here's a list of 10 things, bang it out as an article. And as such, you should treat it as, here's the author's list of 7 things that, in their opinion, are the best at whatever it is they aim to do.
Frank, what was your second question?
So the second one is something that goes into this list, and how do we vet who is creating this list that users are going to see, and how do we get a list that is from somebody that knows what they're talking about and not telling a new user, oh, use Kali because it's cool.
Right.
How do we get something?
Well, there's another subjective statement. Who's to say who knows what they're talking about? We all have an opinion and we all believe we know what we're talking about. So you have to put up with this BS, unfortunately. You just have to try and steer. You could look on Google now and you could come up with 20 lists and have 45 different distributions. There's absolutely no way you can say who is and who isn't qualified to produce this type of list. That's just the internet.
Yeah, it is. It's the internet, and anybody can post anything. But I think as a community, we should kind of get together and state the opinion of this is the best, or this for a beginner that has no technical experience. What is the best? Everybody here would have an opinion on, if I said to you, your best friend wants to try Linux, but he doesn't know anything technical, what you would give him for a distro on his computer. What would be the best one for him? You wouldn't hand him 7. You would hand him one you know that it's going to be good for him.
And probably one that you personally know and use, so that way you're the person that can stand there, and if they have an issue, you can guide them along, not just, hey, here's a disc.
Or here's 7 discs. Go ahead, Frank.
7.
Zeb, I agree with you in that we can't just say, like, this person has the qualifications to be able to say this. And I also agree with you, Rocco, in saying that the community needs to come together. I feel like in order to get a good list of this is the best Linux distros for a beginner, and this is like predefined, this is what we're saying is a beginner. What I feel like we should do is have somewhere, like, let's say DistroWatch does this because he's where you go for this sort of stuff. Let's just say like DistroWatch.
You're doing really well to then.
Let's just say like you had some sort of poll where people in the Linux community can go and vote for X number of distros for being good at Y job. So like in this particular instance, we could say you can go vote for what the Linux distro is that's best at catering to new users. And in all honesty,
so you're gonna get Brexit.
And that poll, the first argument will be, why didn't you include this distro? And why didn't you include that distro?
And that's fine. We had those distros in there.
You're all forgetting one factor here, though. We've said this before. Every distro runs different on different hardware. Are we looking forward on new hardware, or are you looking at somebody that's 5-year-old hardware? So that's why you need to say, okay, hey, what kind of machine do you have? Oh, you've got a 1-year-old or 1.5-year-old or 2-year-old machine. You could use maybe Linux Mint. Peppermint works well too if you want something lighter. You got an older machine? Definitely look at a lighter distro like Peppermint or Elementary or something like that. So there's still choices because it's based on the hardware.
And one distro that I don't see on this list is MX Linux, and I don't know why.
Yes.
And what you could probably do in that case, Joe, is, you could say after your poll, hey, this is just the general, this is a good distro for beginners. But if for some odd reason you don't have good hardware for this, so like, let's just say for argument's sake that the default good distro for beginning Linux users would be Linux Mint. But if you have older hardware, go use Peppermint or MX Linux.
Or have it in year categories from 3 to 5 years old or whatever distros that might work. But even at that, the experiences still could vary. And I said that in the chat a while ago about MX. Now, but Dolphin will say himself, MX is not for new users. Right. But that goes to Alan's point. You get somebody who's been a developer or been an expert in it, or whatever, wants to come over. MX would be a great choice right along with Manjaro too. So.
Well, I get the point that there's different hardware, and that is a valid point. But I guess that's why I'm saying that there should be when we say best, it's not perfect. It's not going to be perfect for every machine. It's going to be the least problem distro. It's going to be the best distro for the mass user base. For somebody that is not technically savvy, this is the one we should give them to run. And if they have problems, we can always suggest they go to this one or that one. But for the best user experience, for the least amount of problems, use this.
Well, and they need a good support network too. So if there are issues and they don't have somebody that can pick up the phone and call, that they can go to a simple place and get an answer.
You know what's really good about this conversation that no one's really picked up on? If we went back 10 years, this would be a totally different conversation because there are now so many good, easy distros to use.
There are many more good choices than there are bad now. And that was a rare thing.
I was actually the other day I was having to update my BIOS, and in order to do that, I had to install Windows. I hate it, but I did. And I noticed at the beginning that Linux is easier to install than Windows because you can tell work has gone into Linux installers.
Oh, yeah.
Because more people see them way more often. The Windows installer looks like absolute crap.
Thomas, why couldn't you flash it through a USB drive?
Because Acer is crap.
Oh.
I had to do the same thing. And for the first time in about 25 years, it actually worked. The BIOS updated. I was really pleased.
Yeah. I had to go grab a separate hard drive, install Windows onto it, boot into Windows, then install my new BIOS. And I hated every second of it because I was running Windows.
Most laptops
Is
have
your name
that.
Thomas Windows OS?
Please no. The only reason I talk about Windows so much is because that's what most people who initially come into Linux are coming from, is Windows.
So,
Okay.
Alan, if you go ahead, Chris, go ahead before we go any further.
Well, the one thing that I want to emphasize here is that there is a completely different philosophy between Windows and Linux. And this is something I've kind of picked up. I mean, it isn't just different commands or different ways. The end desktop is looking the same far as the GUI is concerned, with few minor differences or, well, major differences in some cases. But there is a completely different kernel philosophy from Windows NT and up than what is with the kernel with Linux.
Yeah.
And this is where it's our strength and our weakness really is someone coming over from from a Windows environment and then having to work with completely different thing. What do you mean? I got all these text files that are configuring things, because Windows is long gone from the INI days, and that even with the INI, it was is a way different animal.
Chris, you're talking about the Cathedral versus the Bazaar.
I'm talking about what people know and what they're expecting when they come over. When they come over, they're expecting a Windows substitute, and they're not getting a Windows substitute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Most people are going to come over expecting some familiarity. They want it. They want something that looks similar to what they've been using. They don't want it to look completely different. They're not too many people. Some are, but not too many people are comfortable with change. Okay.
Yeah, we've kind of seen that with like Android phones and interfaces. Right. They've all kind of pretty much just channeled down into one kind of interface, and iPhone's always been that way. And I know people that look at it and go, "What is this? Why is it on the top? Why is it on the side? What is all these things?" It's just learning it. That's all.
So, Alan,
that's also why there was a huge uproar when they changed where the clock was.
I'm going to ask you. I'm going to pose it this way. You have your best friend who you suggest should try Linux. He's not technically savvy. You suggested he try Linux. He does a Google search for Linux. What would you, for the best distro, what would you want him to find?
So, assuming he's my best friend that I speak to on a regular basis and I live near, and I feel confident that if he had a problem and asked me a question, I could solve it, then of course I'm going to say Ubuntu, only because that's the thing I know most well. If for anyone else that you ask that question, if they know MX Linux or Linux Mint really well, and their best friend says, "What Linux should I use?" then they're obviously going to choose the one that they know well, because they're going to feel best placed to be able to support their friends. And that's what we do. Like, we support our friends. We try and help them out in order to get over obstacles and get past problems and get working and get playing and whatever it is they want to do with their computer. So from a personal perspective, I would say I would like it if my friends found Ubuntu. But for random strangers, honestly, I don't care, because it doesn't influence my life if some rando somewhere decides to use Linux Mint or Debian or something else. It doesn't have a net positive or negative effect on my life. I'm not supporting them. I'm not on the hook for making sure that their webcam works. So use what you like. I don't care, right? If you're coming from Windows and you're coming to Linux, yay, we all win. We've got another user who's come across to the light side.
Unless they choose the wrong distro and get a bad experience and then never come back.
Well, what's a bad experience? Like, you could have a bad experience with any distro. Like, honestly, you could.
That's true.
You could go and get an Ubuntu. You could try it, like, even from the point of not being able to find the ISO. Like, maybe
Debian's
our website not tailored for you, or you're colorblind, or you have accessibility problems, or one of a million reasons you couldn't find the ISO, or your USB stick wasn't reliable, and you blame, because you're non-technical, you blame that on Ubuntu. You're like, oh yeah, I tried that, but I couldn't even get it installed because I had a crappy USB stick, or whatever. You know, there's a million reasons why that could happen, and that's
you
why
need to remember that a bad day in Linux is still 1,000 times better than a good day in Windows.
Amen to that.
But you said something, Alan, that I think is very, very, very important to hit on. There used to be an Ubuntu flavor that was geared toward visually impaired people with, disabilities or impairments, and that's something that we don't hear a lot of conversation about. I know most distros have some means of adapting to that. But I do think that because when I used to be a contractor, that was what I specialized in, was doing home modifications, things like that for people who, whether it was hearing impaired, visually impaired, physical impairments. And that's something else that needs to be considered, because as many times as I've sat here and thought about this now, and this is where a light bulb just went off, when you think about the complaints about Gnome. Gnome is probably one of the best distros out there for somebody who may have lack of use of their hands correctly, where they've got to use a strap-on pointer to touch, and have touchscreen support. And these are the things that we don't hear enough conversation about, I think, when it comes to distros as well.
Yeah, it's interesting if you try and do an install, like go and find this. This would be an interesting distro challenge, right? Go and get any Linux distro and try and install it with something covering your screen, completely covering your screen, obscuring your visibility of what's on the screen. You could also do it with your eyes shut, this test, but it's easier to just obscure what's on the screen. And don't cheat. Don't try and second guess this. Just try and install a Linux distribution with your eyes shut or with the screen obscured, and you'll be surprised and enlightened how hard it is for visually impaired users to install Linux.
Yeah.
But can they install Windows?
Well, most people don't install Windows. Most people buy a computer and it comes with Windows. And a lady called Cortana tells them how to move.
Yeah, but you got to get to Cortana first, though. You got to get through the first couple steps.
It's not on by default, yeah.
No.
Alan, do you remember what the distro was I'm talking about? It was an Ubuntu flavor, and it was specifically called something toward people with visual impairments because it was more monochrome. Everything was larger, and it actually did have voice capability too.
Well, Ubuntu's got that. Like, if you
but there was a distro that was strictly for that, though.
But on Ubuntu, when you boot, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but at the bottom of the screen, there's a little picture of a human being and a keyboard, and it's the accessibility icon, and it means when you turn the machine on, you press the space bar in order to initiate the menu, and then you can get into the audio description of
but the one that I'm thinking of, I'll have to do some digging, actually had the machine talking at you from the minute you plugged it in. It's an old distribution. It's been some time since I've used it.
Was it Vinux?
Pardon me?
The Vinux, Vinux.
Okay, that might be it. That sounds kind of familiar. Yeah.
There's a few that are based on Ubuntu. There's a couple based on Debian, but really, you shouldn't have to do that. All distros should do this. And this is why I suggest everyone just try this out, because it's quite enlightening when you realize how awful the experience is for someone who can't see what's going on the screen.
So this week, my question, sorry, Frank, my question would be, how would they know to press the spacebar?
It's one of those things that we put in the documentation, and before you download it, you should know that. Yes, you can use a screen reader on the platform that you're already on before you download the ISO.
Or YouTube, like a YouTube tutorial or something like that, that actually you can listen to. Yeah.
Frank, you wanted to say something?
So for this week, 1904 came out. So I ran the test cases for Ubuntu and Mate, and I did all of them except for one in Mate, and that was the visually impaired. I got about halfway through it. It was very hard to understand the
voice, the text to voice.
It was very, very difficult. And there's times where you're hitting tab, and it's the only one that I could not complete. And if I really was a visually impaired person, I would just leave Linux alone. It was very frustrating. And I know I'm not sure if anybody else had that as a test case, but that's the only test case that I could not complete. And if I was trying to do it, it really enlightened me. It made me like, holy cow, I don't know how I would do this.
I think you have to remember that, I'm not a visually impaired person, so I'm speaking secondhand from someone I worked with who did this stuff. They get tuned in to that voice, and I've watched someone who has a significant visual impairment navigate around the user interface faster than I could, and I can see it. and they're like tab, 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 press down arrow, tab, 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 this, tab, tab, tab. And the thing all the time is shouting in their ear, like that they're pressing tab and describing every button that they're tabbing through. And they only need to hear the first syllable of each button that they're going through before they know which one they don't want to get to the one they do want.
When you lose senses, other ones become heightened. And
that makes sense.
So they say, yeah.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. That like you and I find like the visual assistant in Linux to be painful to listen to. But if it's your only interface, you kind of like tune into it and you learn to use it, unfortunately.
You're right. It was very enlightening.
Mm.
All right. Well, we are running out of time. So this was an awesome conversation, but we didn't pick a distro or an app or whatever we're going to try this week. We didn't pick it.
Yeah.
So what do you got? Suggestions?
Okay. Suggestion from me. I would have guessed most people did Solus Budgie this week.
Mm-hmm.
Probably. Why don't we now try Ubuntu Budgie 1904 and see what the different experiences is on the same desktop? So it's a bit like your desktop challenge for this week. You know, we had a desktop before, so we're picking a desktop, but I'm saying Ubuntu 1904 because it's just come out in beta, and I'm sure they could do with some help and feedback.
So are you suggesting it for a distro, or are you suggesting it as a desktop environment?
Yes.
So we can mark it down later.
Yeah. Well, I'll suggest it as a distro. Ubuntu Budgie 1904.
Okay. Any other suggestions? Any comments on that?
I think what Seb said is a good idea, but I also think aptitude would be another app to try to install instead of using apt in the term. We use aptitude. Chris Titus did a video on it. I installed it, and I'm actually kind of liking it. So I think that would be another app to consider too. If you wanted to do, you could actually do both.
Anybody else?
Zorin 15. It'd be interesting to see what they did with Gnome. It looks so different.
It's definitely different than Gnome. Definitely.
You know, if you like dark themes, you're going to be out of luck because that thing will hit you wearing white from day one.
I thought Zorin was cinnamon, no? Or did they change that?
No, it's always
they have a modified GNOME version, and I think the light is XFCE, if I'm not mistaken, a modified XFCE.
Yeah.
So, all right. Anything else? Any other suggestions? If not, we'll go with Ubuntu Budgie.
Sounds good.
All right.
Sounds good. Ubuntu Budgie.
Good.
So I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation because I enjoyed it. It was a great conversation, I have to say.
Yes.
And YouTube chat was flying. I couldn't keep up. It was crazy.
All right. Everybody gets a last word. Peter, you are up.
Yeah, great show, Rocco. I really enjoyed tonight as well. I'm looking forward to going all team red.
Very nice. Bash, last word, brother.
Thanks for the stream as always, and we will see how the 1904 goes.
All right, Frank.
Thank you, Brock. Thank you, Zeb, and thank you to the Solus community for all the work that they did and all the support they gave us this week.
Yep, absolutely. Barbara.
Okay, I just want to thank everyone. This was a fun evening, and next week we'll see what happens.
Okay, Thomas, last word.
Thanks for having me on again this week. I guess Solus was great, even though I didn't try it that much. Yeah, check out Dragoros at dragoros.org.
Easy, last word, brother.
It's always a pleasure to come to Big Daddy Linux Live. It is the highlight of my week, saddo that I am. I love coming here, chatting with you people, giving everybody's opinions, because you go away with something new at the end of every show. So long may it continue. Well done, Rocco.
Dan, last word?
Zeb stole all my stuff. No, really, it's always very enjoyable. It's great to listen. And props to the Solus devs. They did a great job on their release. They should be proud of that. and look forward to next week.
Paul, last word.
Yeah, thanks, Rocco and Opie, and especially you, Zeb, for knocking all those caravans out of your way.
Colin, last word, brother.
Well, thanks, Rocco. Enjoyed this evening, especially listening to everyone's perspective on a new user. I try not to forget my very, very first beginnings of Linux, because it's very easy to forget the hardships that you go through on things like this. So it was very interesting, and thanks for the stream. Looking forward to trying out Ubuntu Budgie. It's another one of my really big favorites. So thanks for the stream. Thanks, Zeb.
I have to stop right there and just say that, in one of the comments, we were considered Ubuntu fanboy. Something like that. Canonical fanboys or something like that. Trying all
Can't imagine where that comes from.
Yeah. So this will just play right into that. All right, Dave, last word.
Thank you, Rocco. Thank you, Zeb. And 2 huge shout outs. One to the Solus team. They have done an incredible job on their release. Yeah. And one to Silent Robot, who has put out Salient OS, which has become my new base install on pretty much everything.
Nice. Chris, last word, brother.
Not too much other than thank you much for having this, and hope to be a part of it in the future. Although it sounds like I'm going away. I'm not going away. Too bad. Hopefully I'll start producing some videos and get them out. I know there's a couple of people who have subbed to my channel, and I promised them that I'd get some kind of content out, because suddenly I got an increase of subscribers. Why, I don't know. But anyway, and look forward to seeing you next week.
Chris, if you post in the Zoom chat your YouTube link, we'll post it in YouTube chat. People can subscribe. Okay. Big Pod, last word.
Hopefully this week I will check the Ubuntu Budgie. Hopefully school won't eat all my time. This week probably was more hectic than normal, but yeah. Good to be here. Basically first time I'm free this week. Thanks.
Joe, last word.
Thanks again for having me back this week. I'm glad I was able to talk a little bit better tonight without too much coughing going on, because I've been still fighting that a little bit, but it was great to be back. I've missed all you guys. It's funny sitting in the audience here versus being out here and having a conversation. You know, the beauty of these healthy conversations is everybody learns something. And I think the long and short of, no matter what the description of a new user is, it's still going to come down to the desire for the person to learn it that's willing to try it, whether they're going to be on it or not. So to me, it's been, I think, one of the greatest blessings to be able to have this platform of not only people, but the distros themselves, and the fact that we have so many great choices from where we were 10 years ago. I think that was a valid point, and that's something to keep reflecting on. Thanks again.
All right, Steve, last word.
Having a great time, getting to know you guys. I find out Paul is just maybe an hour north of me. That was interesting. Just having a good time. And by trying these distributions, finding that nothing's taking me away from my peppermint. So,
okay, man, it's all good. Scrapjaw, last word.
Well, I'm still doing music stuff. I actually have a video up I posted, I think, in the last 2 weeks. I know I wasn't here last week. I'm just messing with some chill, groovy beats and taking some more online tutorials in mixing. So if anybody records stuff or has people that records and they want someone to mix, send them this way. And there'll be more stuff posted on scrapjaw.studio where you can find it. And I'll be sure to be messing with this Budgie because it's Ubuntu and I know it'll probably accept my audio stuff.
Unless it doesn't, because of as long as the repositories are up to that.
Well, Mixbus 5 is based on Ardor, but they kind of are an LTS kind of thing because it's a commercial product. The thing that's commercial about it is it's each channel strip where your audio comes in, it's all a V. Basically, it's like an effect plug-in, but it emulates their analog consoles. So, and then you just download from this, like a deb file that's in a repository or whatever. It just installs. So it should be fine. And all of the hardware drivers these days are what they call class compliant, meaning you just plug and play. So should be good.
All right, Alan, last word.
Hello. If you like hearing my stupid British voice, then you can also hear it on the User Error podcast. Error.show is where you'll find that. And also on the Ubuntu podcast, which is coming back next week. UbuntuPodcast.org.
Nice.
Yay!
Yay!
Eric.
We do like hearing your voice. I listen to everything. You're very soothing. And no. I'm not sucking up. I'm happy I get a chance to thank you personally because I get a lot of enjoyment out of what you do. So thank you for taking
Thanks, Eric. I do appreciate you saying that.
Definitely. What can I say? I know everybody says highlight of the week. It's cliche by now, but it's absolutely true. You know, this is my peer group. You guys are great. These discussions are great. I love to hear your varying opinions. To those who say that we're a group of fanboys of any one thing, I think we all like a lot of different things. So I don't know that I can agree with that. You know?
I think we're all fanboys in our own right.
Yeah. So we're fans of each other.
Something.
There you go.
So thanks. See you next week.
Ben, last word.
First of all, thanks for having me. I'm sorry that I was late. Got home a little bit late from work. I'm just glad that I made it for one of these. And go Linux, right?
There you go. Good to have you, man. All right.
Thanks.
I want to thank the Solus guys. And I won't mention anybody's name. I'll just mention all the Solus team. It's a great experience if you can get by some of the things that we mentioned. Appreciate all of the hard work. All right. This week's challenge, Ubuntu Budgie 1904. Check us out on the Telegram group. BigDaddyLinux.com/Telegram. Other than that, we will see you next week. Remember, long live Linux.
See you, everyone.
Good night.
Bye. Good night, everybody.
See ya. Bye.
Love you all.